Our next guest works at Vox Media. He has experience with the NBA Players Association. We have the pleasure in welcoming Olisa. Forgive me if I mispronounce your last name. Is it Azikiwe?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, joining Hoopsology. How's it going, Olisa?
All good. Yeah. Again, having a good Sunday. I'm glad to be here. Talk some hoops. Talk the NBA, sports in general, and yeah, happy to be on.
So, as we were talking off air, Olisa, our show did a lot of just coverage on the NBA bubble and kind of the perspective of the players and what they were going through when the first pandemic first hit. And we kind of want to get your perspective, just what the player association does, kind of like is their interworkings and how it relates to the rest of the NBA. So before we get to that, I just want to get to some kind of late breaking news that broke just the last couple of days with CJ McCollum becoming the president of the Players Association. What's your
Yeah.
opinion on that? And kind of what is his role? Like, I mean, it must be tough just him being a regular NBA player, but taking on this additional role of being the president of the Players Association. What does that entail for him specifically?
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned before, I've experienced being at the National Basketball Players Association. I was there for a little over a year or so recently. So as pertains to CJ McCollum, I know in general the position as like president is more of a just a more of an achievement in terms of leadership. In terms of, like, it's a sign that the people who like voted for you actually believe in you as someone who can provide decision making, can listen to people, and just an overall a good person to lead the charge when it comes to the union and players, and representing the players' opinions and their overall objectives going forward in this NBA. So for CJ, I mean, I personally don't have any relationship or had the pleasure of meeting him, but just from afar, I know that he's someone who's very curious about sports media in general, and the business of sports. So I'm like, from the outside looking in, I know he's going to bring that perspective and that expertise. Um, I was there under Chris Paul, and although I didn't get the pleasure of meeting him as well, because mostly he was playing in the season. So that's the thing. Half the year they're doing their full time job or their other full time job as being an NBA star. So a lot of the communication is definitely more high level, but definitely it's more of like setting the culture in terms of being collaborative, making sure like you're not only the person in charge, but like almost like a servant leader in terms of make sure you consider the opinions of the entire 450 members, because that's the number of people that play in the NBA. So, excuse me. But yeah, in general, I think this just shows the amount of faith that the other players in the league have in CJ, and I'm sure he's going to do a great job.
Do you think there'll be any kind of an adjustment period from Chris Paul to CJ? I mean, Chris Paul was such a leader for a long time and had, he played a role in some integral decisions over the years. Is there any kind of like a transitional phase to CJ McCollum, or do you think it would just be kind of normal, him just becoming the president? Is there anything that you think CJ will do differently? I know you obviously haven't met him, but just in terms of, it's a new era. I mean, CJ's more of like these current players compared to Chris Paul of kind of the banana boat crew, lack for a better term. So is there
Yeah.
going to be any kind of like transitional period or anything new do you think CJ will bring to this role, you think?
Well, I think this kind of represents like the changing of the guard. You mentioned like Chris Paul, like someone who was drafted in 2005. Kind of comes from that more old school type of like LeBron, Melo, Dwayne Wade, just older generation. So CJ coming into this position is more representation of like those younger players who are coming through the ranks, kind of achieving the leadership roles now, or being in power of being a leader now. So transition wise, I'm sure the executive team there uh, right now is still Michelle Roberts. I know she's supposed to be in transition or so or such, but I'm sure she and the rest of the higher level executives there are going to do a great job of like bringing CJ on board. I know like you don't just become president; you usually have to put in the time and effort in terms of like helping out with the PA before you are able to have that pleasure of being president. So CJ's probably not just coming into this just without a clue. I mean, it shouldn't be too much of a hard transition. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some like growing pains, but for the most part, it should be fine.
Shifting gears, I wanted to get your thoughts on just his overall NBA season. It was such seems
Mhm.
like it's such a roller coaster. Some controversy, just some inconsistency with his players starting, just a pandemic, this playoffs. What were just your thoughts observing everything? Your impressions of just the eventual champion, the Bucks.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy this season? Just like I'm sure you're a fan of hoops, so what was just your overall just enjoyment level? Because it's kind of ranged all over the map. I can't really get a beat on like if people really enjoyed this season. I know I did. I did enjoy the playoffs. This is really a breath of fresh air in
Yeah,
terms
me
of the
too.
newer talent that was seen in the playoff scene. But what was your overall thoughts?
Oh yeah. Overall, I mean, as a fan, I definitely enjoyed the season. Like again, there were a lot of plot lines and like storylines that like made it definitely more interesting or so. COVID, of course, made everything a little bit more different. I think it's from the situation where people were like not sure when it was going to start or like whether it should start, things like that. It's just you have to take into account like the league in itself is a business, and so I mean, from a product standpoint, I think you can say that the foul manipulations and the choppy flow of the game definitely kind of hurt the product. And as you see, the news broke today that like they're going to start implementing those new officiating changes to even the summer league games now. So that's just give you a sense of like how some of the fan feedback that was coming, that was being heard from the people in the league offices, and like they're starting to take notice and implement real things. The playing games of this past season was a success, in my opinion, in terms of like generating and sustaining excitement and intrigue in games and team standings late into the season. I know that was a strong concern, especially people in and around the league, or whether like do like your casual fans actually care like about who gets that 7 or 8 seeds or things like that. But this whole idea of like kind of kind of like mirroring NCAA in a sense of like the being more desperate or just having more of a chance of getting in. So I guess you say it's more like college football than basketball. But in general, just the sense that like more and more teams and more fan bases will be more intrigued because their teams have more of a chance of getting into the playoffs is something that I think the playing games did a great job at doing. Obviously, with the playoffs injuries, definitely kind of harmed the product in a way. You know, players were injury riddled, but I still think it was very entertaining. There's a lot of players, young players like Trey Young that like rose up and like created a bigger name for himself, and as you see it this offseason, created a bigger bag for himself in terms of signing. Um, you have your franchises like the Clippers, and even like your players like Chris Paul, who overcame some demons and advancing further into the playoffs. So I mean, from product standpoint, there were some ups and downs, but overall, it was pretty interesting from just from in my opinion. And from a business standpoint, however, I think a lot of fans or just people in general, going back to the whole NBA as a business, um, don't fully comprehend how devastating COVID has been for not just the NBA, but sports leagues in general. It's definitely like heightened their sense of like we need to essentially grab every dollar necessary. As you can see, I mean, as you saw this season, the NBA actually set a record for the amount of sponsorship they were able to accrue, and that's just kind of like them feeling more desperate in terms of like trying to recoup all the losses that happened when COVID hit and like derailed the 1920 season. I mean, just to add more numbers to that, like according to a lot of reports, especially, I mean, including like ESPN, COVID dropped league revenue from 1819 to 1920 by 10%. So in 1819, it was $8.76 billion, and then from 1920 with COVID and everything, it dropped to 7.92 billion. So yeah, pretty significant there. Um, and so and then like a lot of people forget like the 1920 season started off with like the Daryl Morey and China situation, which has some financial repercussions there as well. So like
Mhm.
overall, like the 1920 season was like a season from hell for the NBA. Like losing almost $1.5 billion with everything said and done. And so like if you look at the numbers for them to actually get back to like pre-COVID success and pre-COVID numbers, they would have to like 1920, like being 72 games in all, half the games having being without fans, would have had to like brought in like $9.83 billion, which is astronomical. And thinking about it, it's like
Mhm.
way more than all time numbers there. So like in general, like you have to kind of take into context how sports leagues in general are trying to like recuperate. And like I'm saying this all this because it's like it's going to affect salary caps down the line. So
Mm.
and the way GMs essentially kind of manage their rosters. I mean, if you look at so like right now the media rights deal is like 24 billion over 9 years, and that's set to expire after the 24-25 season. And if you look at reports now, they're reporting that media rights deals are like right now the NBA is like kind of asking their partners or like putting it out there that they're going to ask for around 70 billion to 75 billion over the course of 9 years, which is essentially 3 times the current deal right now.
Yeah.
So it's like it's more so like these like they're hurting, but like at the end of the day, when it comes to media, like a lot of sports, live sports is like essentially why a lot of these networks are still able to keep the lights on. So they understand that as well. So like going back to the whole being more desperate, that's kind of like forming or like remodeling itself into like them like putting the pressure on their media partners to ask for more money. And again, saying all this because like media rights deals goes into the salary cap, but meaning that like in the near future, at least by with the 2020 the 2025 off season is going to be I guess the 2016 off season times three. When you look at media rights deals, um, yeah, like everybody remembers how crazy 2016 free agency was,
Yeah.
and then also
Mhm.
like I'm sorry to be rambling,
No.
but but also some like GMs might take it upon themselves to be a little more creative and like signing bigger contracts in the near future because knowing that like those big contracts are going to be much cheaper down the line once the that alleged or projected big media rights deal kicks in. So
You give a lot of great information.
Yeah,
So
thank you. Elisa, I wanted your thoughts on how the TV ratings tie into all of this because it seems almost counterintuitive when you see that ratings are down a bit. And I think everyone understands, scheduling has been different. It's
mhm,
it's been different times, the
right.
past 1.5 seasons or however you want to put that. But if you see a trend continue where ratings are down, let's say below what they were in the 2019 finals when Toronto won, is that something that the league could potentially get pushback from the companies that they are trying to sell the rights to in terms of this number that you mentioned, 3 times as much for these media rights? Or do you think there's enough competition that maybe they're just going to get what they ask for no matter what? Someone else will pay that.
No, yeah, that's a great question. I think the key here is like the key in most situations is context. So especially when it comes to, like these live rights and like overall media, I think across the board, like ratings are going down. Like top TV shows don't generate the same amount of ratings as they did 20 or 30 years ago. And the same goes
Sure.
for sports and like everything. A large part of it has to do with like the streaming services like Netflix or your new ones like Disney Plus and Peacock and Paramount and all the other ones. And so like if you think of it like this, so the pie of the ratings is getting smaller, but these sports leagues still have the same share of the pie. It's
Mm.
like so the pie may be getting smaller, but like their share of the pie is still relatively the same or big or what have you. So they still retain that leverage when going into these negotiations with their media partners to get essentially what they're asking for because like as I said before like these media especially these networks who aren't in the streaming game or aren't backed by like the most profitable or high valuable companies in the world, like your Amazons and Apple, they need sports leagues to put on these games because like sports as a property is so special because like if you don't watch it live, you kind of lose the luster and the value of it, and you can't like participate in the conversations around it because like you're behind. So you have to be active in participating with it in the moment, and that in the moment, that live aspect of it is so valuable, and like so that pulls in a lot of eyes there. And so again, like the pie may be getting smaller, but like these leagues still retain their sizable amount of that pie.
I had a follow-up question to that, and I think Matt and I have been talking about the ratings, and you brought up the media rights still being up. I think you said what in 2024 or 25?
Yeah, so the last year of this current NBA media rights deal is the 2024 to 2025 season.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Is as best as you can predict, I know this might be a super difficult question, but
Mhm.
you're very insightful with your analysis of this. Is there any kind of a possibility that we could see a shift in terms of the networks that want the NBA? So right now we've been used to ESPN and Turner having the rights to the NBA. Is there any way that NBC, Fox, CBS they jump into this fray of really wanting the NBA? Because obviously all these companies put out offers, but there's
Mhm.
only certain ones that are like really super serious. So is there? Do
Right.
you think there's any kind of a possibility that we could see a shift in terms of other networks covering or picking up the NBA when those rights deals are up?
Yeah, yeah. Great question. I would say that so in understanding the relationship when it comes to like sports leagues and their media partners, it's although like mentioning like sports league have a lot of leverage, but it's still mutual beneficial for the sports leagues to like kind of like come to like be helpful to their media partners in the sense that like especially if you look like the NFL, like they've been on network television forever, and they kind of are resistant to like just being exclusively on cable or on a streaming platform like your Amazon Prime. And like NBA is essentially the same way because everyone's chasing the NFL, especially in the United States. But so essentially, that from sports leagues, they want to be in front of the most eyes as possible. Not only helps with money, but it helps with creating better awareness for the league and its brand. The more people you're in front of, the more fans you're able to get. That allows you to go, wherever, have teams in different markets as well, because your game and your products are in front of a large scale of people. So they want to be with people who have the largest net essentially, and like that today is still your network television operators, like your NBCs, your Foxes, your CBS, and your ABC. So like yes, Amazon and Apple, they have the money, or even Netflix as well. They have the money to like put forth a lucrative deal on the table for these sports leagues or your NBAs and your NFLs. But it's still like you still have to put into the equation when it comes to doing good business of like how many people are actually going to see my product. Like it's not only good like get paid, but like long term, like how does this affect my product and the brand as a whole? So I think Apple and your Amazons and your Google or whatever major tech company that comes into play, they're gonna have a seat at the table because just from a money standpoint, they're gonna have the money to compete. But these leagues are still going to consider like how many people can be reached by being on certain networks. And like I mean, a lot of people say Amazon might just I don't know. People are saying that like one of these tech giants might just take like exclusive rights for these sports leagues, but I don't think that's the case because it just doesn't equate to doing good business from a branding and overall awareness standpoint.
To your point too, I would think the league would be worried about infrastructure in someone new coming to the table like that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, certainly you'd imagine they could get great talent and assemble that infrastructure pretty quickly, but I don't know if confidence plays into that as well from the
Yeah.
league, kind of protecting the brand.
Right. Yeah, you can't underestimate the tenure of these relationships, and like they're not just business deals; these are companies and people working together to put forth a product and put it in front of thousands of people over many decades or years or what have you. So within these relationships come sense of like respect, knowledge, expectations, and things that like sometimes you can't quantify, but like are very tangible to the overall success for both those leagues and the networks.
I wanted to ask you the NBA's relationship with ESPN in particular. And I guess my question is, does I guess the mainstream media and just fans in general make too much of a big deal over drama with the coverage of how the NBA covers the league?
So yeah, I mean, when it comes to like these situations, you got to think about what each party is bringing to the table. So like from an NBA standpoint, like I mean, yeah, NBA, the four letter network, they tend to bring a lot of drama with their coverage, but going back to like being in front of lots of eyes, they have the scale and the reach to like kind of don't necessarily overlook it, but you're less inclined to make a bigger deal out of it. So, but like obviously, if that drama starts to affect the product, is from the NBA standpoint, games, especially primetime games that are being put on, then they may start to send some strongly worded emails or like have some very long conference calls about those things. But it's all about significance. So like a lot of controversies and news topics, like over time they lessen in their severity. So I guess you just gotta apply some patience into it. But I mean, to your point, this has been like long standing, or like this has been something that's happening over a longer period of time than I guess from a league standpoint you would like. But I mean, overall, like ESPN being backed by Disney, they have the money, they have the reach, they have the marketing and all that. So like from a league standpoint, you don't make too much of a deal about it, but you would obviously prefer that it wasn't so much drama there.
Awesome. I just wanted to ask one last question about the next CBA, just to get your insight about what is the relationship like right now between the players and ownership. Do you expect the next CBA? And I know we're putting on our prediction cap here, looking into crystal balls, and everything's uncertain. But do you feel like the relationship right now is pretty solid between players and owners, and that we're not at a risk for potential like lockout season or things like that? Do you see any road bumps in the horizon, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. So I can say like I asked this question when I was still at the NBPA, and so like from what I was still in my understanding, it's like especially compared to other league relationships with them league offices and their unions, the NBA in terms of being amicable and like working together is ranks like right at the top almost. In terms of like being able to work with their league partners. I mean, as you can see in how the bubble was able to be put on, I mean, that doesn't happen if there's not a good, strong relationship between union and league office. And so I don't see any like major ruckus event happening that may cause for like a loss of games or lockout, what have you. Fingers crossed, especially as an NBA fan.
Sure.
But yeah, I think from a relationship standpoint, they work pretty well together. There's good communication, at least from my experience, and I think going forward, as long as they like compared to like the NFL, they consider like leagues and team owners actually consider their players to be partners in this business venture that we call the NBA. So that is important there because that affects like how you communicate, how you negotiate with your partners. And so if you actually consider your the other party to be on an equal level as you, you're more likely to be forthcoming in things and be able to work well together with them.
And I guess when money is flowing in, as it might with these new medium negotiations, it's pretty hard to create an incentive where you want to break that up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, fighting leads to like loss of games, which leads to loss of money. So you try to avoid fighting.
We appreciate you being on the show. Let us know where we can find you on social media, excuse me, and what you're working on, like in the future. Any projects or anything we should kind of be on the lookout for?
No, yeah, definitely. So you can, I guess you can find me. I mean, this might sound corny, but you can find me on LinkedIn. I check my DMs a lot, so if you have any inquiries there. social media wise, Instagram, you can find me. I think it's Olisa underscore AZ at Olisa underscore AZ. Um, and then venture or projects wise, I want to start I'm planning on starting like a blog uh, centered around my expertise in sports business. And kind of, I feel like there might be a little of a need or a niche for like kind of not synthesizing all the like back end business things that happen and like kind of like you know synthesizing it into a way that actually applies to a lot of fans, like give them a reason why they should care, like i.e. the media rights deal and how it affects salary cap and how that will affect the makeup of your favorite team. So things like that, that probably be under the title of Sports Business Feed. I'm still workshopping the title there. But yeah, overall, that's where I'm at right now. I'm hoping to do more in terms of content. But right now, it's been definitely just more of like learning and working and like growing my career.
That's awesome. And I think there's definitely a need in that. I mean, I'm a huge sports business nerd. I love ratings. I just because this kind of the sports I follow, that was kind of that the heart, like that's like integral to their business surviving. Whereas kind of team sports, they're kind of all good
Yeah.
for the most part. There's no threat. So I kind of the way that all these sports kind of interwovenly affect each other, I
Hmm.
think it's really fascinating. So I'll be on the lookout for your blog for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We'll definitely have you on. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting year in terms of this media and other stories. So we'll definitely have you on for your expertise.
Yeah. Let me know. Appreciate it. Love being on.